All right, so this is the second portion of the HTML lesson, and what we did drawing a rectangle and a square, or you can obviously do a square. What we're talking about is drawing geometric shapes on a canvas. And when you start thinking about doing animation or anything like that, obviously geometric shapes are important. I mean, a human body is a combination of lots of different geometric shapes. So we're going to learn how to do these things, and then we'll just keep adding to them and adding to them. But this one is on creating a circle. And so it's the same basic startup as we did for the rectangle, but what we're going to be doing is we're using a different method called the arc method, and that's just going to be doing, that's when you do a circle as opposed to squares with a bunch of right angles. So let's just take a look at what this looks like to start. And we have our canvas, and then we have our circle, and we've determined where it starts and what the size of the circle is and what the color of the circle is. So let's go in here and see how we do that. This is good when you get to use some of your geometry and some of those mathematical formulas that you were wondering if they ever had any value. Well, when you're doing anything with geometry, then they become very valuable. So let's take a look at this. So you're going to declare, right now I'm going to actually use a variable for radius, and I just want to say that I want that to be, I'm going to say make it a little bit bigger, make it to be 40. And then what you're going to do is use a thing called begin path. So again, we're referring back to our drawing object, which is the canvas element, context dot begin path. And then what we're going to do is we're going to specify the dimensions of this circle. And the first order of business is where do we want it to start? And because it's a circle, we're saying where do we want the radius to be? I'm sorry, where do we want the center of the circle to be? So right now we're going to say 100 over from the top, 100x, and then 100 down, and that gets us to where the radius is going to start. And then we have our radius. We define our radius, and we say that we want that to be 40 pixels. You can make it whatever you want. And then the 0 here is basically defining the circumference of the circle. And so we're starting at the beginning, and then we're using our circumference formula, 2 times pi, and then it multiplies times the radius to define the circumference. So these you're probably not going to change in any meaningful way when you're drawing a circle. So all you're really going to do is specify where do you want it to start, what are the x, y coordinates where you want it to start, and how big the radius do you want it to be. And then you can either do that immediately here. So like let me take those out. Okay, and because we didn't put in our fill, it doesn't do anything. All right, so if we took out the fill style, then it would just fill in as black. All right, so let's just go here, save work, show web page, and you can see that the circle is where I want it to be. If you want to, you can move it. I can change the startup location. I can make it farther over. Let's say I want to do it 200 over. You can see it goes there immediately. And if I want to make it lower down in the canvas, I can change that and get that down here. And I can change this, of course, to whatever color that I want. So this is, and what the key thing to remember is you're going to be able to move these things. You're going to be able to make them responsive to where the cursors are. You're going to be able to do all sorts of things with this ability to draw on the fly. So the assignment here is I just want you to draw a circle, place it somewhere on your canvas, and fill it with a color.